Crypto Kids, welcome back to another show. Today we're going to be looking at President Trump's speech over in the Detroit Economic Club. But before we go into that, he's currently giving his introduction. We will go into it in just a second. Today, Bitcoin is still consolidating within this ascending triangle pattern. We got the critical inflation data numbers, which we will cover after watching President Trump's speech. I want to highlight two very important details. If Bitcoin is able to break above 94.2K with 2 daily confirmations, I think the 200 daily moving average is going to be what's happening. But unfortunately, we still have a CME gap active at 88.2. So I believe we will come down to the support line of this ascending triangle pattern before giving our decisive move. And I will cover the bearish scenario again after watching President Trump's remarks. So let's switch over to the Detroit Economic Club and listen to what President Trump has to say.
You want to cheat, and they do cheat. They're terrible. Michigan Senate Republican leader Eric Nesbitt. Thank you, Eric. Thank you. Look good, Eric. State Senator Jim Runstad. Jim, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Former Congressman Mike Rogers, who's running for the Senate, and he'll be a great senator. And he's going to be a great senator. He was a great congressman, and then he left. He went on to very big things. He did well, no matter where he was. And I think they took that away from you last time. I'll be honest with you, Mike. I really do. I don't like to get things going. I don't like to be controversial at all. But they rigged the election on you. Mine was too big to rig. You won. I'm telling you, you won. But you're going to do great this time. He's a great guy, actually. He's going to be an amazing senator. Thank you. Thank you for being here, too, Mike. Special envoy to Iraq, Mark Savaya. Mark. Hi, Mark. Thank you. Great job you've done. This guy, he negotiates better than anybody around. Thank you. You need it. With Iraq, you need it. You need to be a good negotiator, Mark. I also want to thank Michigan's great congressional delegation. They're amazing. That's been back in Washington due to a very important vote that's coming up. They had a choice. Sir, we want to be with you, but if we're not with you, we're going to lose. But we'll still be with you. I said, no, I'd rather have you win. Don't worry about it. So we're going to win the vote. Representatives Lisa McClain, Jack Bergman, John Molinar, Bill Heisinger, Tim Walberg, John James, and Tom Barrett. They're great people, every one of them. And as many of you remember, I came here at the height of the 2024 campaign to lay out my plan to bring jobs and factories and wealth racing back to the United States and coming back to the great state of Michigan. And just a few weeks later, the people of this state and the voters all across the country endorsed that vision in a landslide victory. We won everything. We won all 7 swing states. We won the Electoral College 312 to 226. We won the popular vote by millions and millions of... Oh, it's so nice to win the popular vote. I won the popular vote all 3 times, too, but we're not going to get into that. But the first time they said I didn't win the popular vote, but I won the Electoral College. So they'd always say, while he didn't win, this is the way I got introduced every time. While he didn't win the popular vote, he won the Electoral College, you know. So this is the way I was introduced for 4 years. And guess what? We said, I'm going back, and we're going to win and we won the popular vote by a lot. So they can't say that crap anymore. And the thing that was most impressive, we won 86% of all counties in America, 2,700 to 525. Think of that, 2,700 to 525. And that's why when you look at the maps on Republican, Democrat, with red being Republican, as most of you know by now, I think, every once in a while you see one where they have it reversed. I said, why would you do that? Well, we think it looks better. I said, look, red is Republican. Let's not try and change the voters' minds on things. Just do it that way. And the map was virtually all red. That was about the counties. That was the 2,700 to 550, I think is the exact number. Most importantly, we won a historic mandate to make America great again. And this is what we're doing. We're making America great again like never before. And now, after less than 12 months in office, this is the easiest speech to make. I have great people.
I just want to, guys, quickly interrupt President Trump's speech because we have developments coming in from the Iran situation. Again, we covered that geopolitical tensions across the world were rising. And very sadly, Iran is one of those countries that have geopolitical tensions. President Trump, just before going on stage, he mentioned that Americans should evacuate Iran. He didn't give exact details into the help that was going to be sent into Iran, but I just wanted to note that. We just got word from Canada that the Canadian government is urging Canadians to leave Iran. So God forbid, there could be potential strikes. Let's hope not, but I just wanted to interrupt and mention that this could be the case. How does that affect Bitcoin? Because we are a Bitcoin and crypto channel. That's all that I like to commentate on. I like to stay in my lane. Obviously, it's not the best. It's more bearish, and we do have that 88.2k CME gap. So just FYI, wanted to let you guys know and interrupt.
Is crashing, the hostages all over the place. Remember that one? Think about Sleepy Joe Biden with Afghanistan. What a disaster. The most embarrassing day in the history of our country, in my opinion. Real dope. Now, after less than 12 months in office, I'm back in Michigan to report to you on the strongest and fastest economic turnaround in our country's history. It's really been historic. There's never been, we're not 12 months, we're through 11 months. We've got $18 trillion being invested in our country. The most of any country ever was 3. We're at 18. There's never been anything like this. You are so lucky I allow you into this room to even be with me. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. The fake news will say Donald Trump thinks he's hot stuff. Right now I'm feeling pretty good, though, I will say. Oh, you're so lucky to be here. Under our administration, growth is exploding, productivity is soaring, investment is booming, incomes are rising, inflation is defeated, America is respected again like never before, and other than that, we're not doing that well. Now think of all those things I just said. Every single, inflation down, growth at an all-time high, stock market every day, 48 days in a row, 48 days during the course of 11 months, we hit a new high on the stock market, all of them. 1 year ago, we were a dead country. Now we are the hottest country anywhere in the world. That was said to me by many leaders. By almost every metric, we have quickly gone from the worst numbers on record to the best and strongest numbers, the most dynamic numbers, and an economy that is far ahead of even my optimistic. I had a very optimistic schedule, I thought. I didn't think it was, but people said it was very optimistic. Turns out to be very pessimistic compared to what we've done. But we'll go down as the greatest in history, greatest first year in history nobody's ever had, just based on the numbers. Based only on the numbers, not based on me, based only on the numbers. Because, you get these guys like the governor of California likes to say how well he's doing. California's doing horrendously, but he says how well. We base it on numbers. There's never been numbers like this. Through 4 long years before I took office, crooked Joe Biden and his allies in Congress inflicted the economic nightmare known as stagflation. How many times have you heard the word? We hit it with Joe. We hit everything. What a disaster. Meaning low growth and high inflation. How does that work? Not good. So you have lousy growth and high inflation. In fact, it's the lowest growth ever and the worst inflation in the history of our country. That is really tantamount to not having a good 4 years, right? In other words, Sleepy Joe and the people that ran the auto pen were a complete and total disaster for our nation. They were a disaster for our nation. Had they won the election less than 1 year ago, we would have been, as I've often said, Venezuela on steroids. Now I'm Venezuela's biggest fan. We're working with them, but they came down from a very high number to a disaster, a disaster. And we would have been Venezuela on steroids, and we're bringing Venezuela back, and we're going to be great for Venezuela, great for our country. We're taking in, as I said, millions and millions of barrels of oil, and now they're coming in initially on a daily basis, 50 million, and values of over $5 billion. That's in 1 day. Just think of it, the biggest ships in the world can take 1 million barrels. The biggest ships in the world take 1 million. We have 50 million barrels. We need 50 of the biggest ships in the world just to get it out. We're bringing it in to be refined. It's an incredible feeling. It's great. Winning is a good thing. We're going to work with Venezuela. We'll make that country very strong again. We'll get oil prices down even further. We have it down at about a 6-year low, 7-year low, but we're going to get it down further. Joe Biden gave us a colossal stagflation catastrophe, but my administration's rapidly and very decisively ended that. We have quickly achieved the exact opposite of stagflation, almost no inflation and super high growth. So we have the highest growth we've ever had. Think of that. The highest growth we've ever had, and we've only been there 11 months. Think of what we can do for the rest of it. But do we have wood around here? I want to knock on a little wood. They have one little, everything's plastic nowadays. It's very tough. Now we have the greatest growth, and we have, inflation way, way down. But we inherited terrible growth, and we inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country. The fake news would say 49 years. So when I say the history, they give me a lot of time, but I believe it's the history. But let's say 49 years. Would you say 49 years is okay, right? It's pretty bad. What do you think, Mr. Senator, Mr. Future Senator? I'd say 49. What sounds worse, 49 years or history? I think 49 years almost sounds worse. Maybe I'll just use it and I won't argue with these people. As of this morning, core inflation for the past 3 months has been just 1.6%. The numbers we just announced just before I came on stage. And GDP is smashing expectations with the fastest growth for this country in many years. The fourth quarter is projected at 5.4%, and that's despite the Democrat shutdown where we lost at least 1.5 points. The Democrat shutdown, we would have had close to 7. Think of that, close to 7. They were projecting to, the fakers were projecting to. And if we keep deregulating and adding more capacity, like I saw today at Ford, and if we don't raise interest rates every time good news is mentioned. In the old days, I'm probably old. I used to be up at these lecterns and I'd say, I'm younger than pretty much everybody in the room. Now I say I'm older than pretty much everybody in the room. I like it the other way better, actually. But you're too young. But in the old days, when you had good numbers, interest rates would go down. When you had good numbers, the market would go through the roof. That's the way we're going to make it again. That's the old-fashioned way. That's the right way. Today, if you announce great numbers, they raise interest rates to try and kill it. So you can never really have the kind of rally you should have. What happens and what we want, we're going to have a lot of great months, a lot of great quarters. I want the market to go up. You announce unbelievable numbers and the market goes down because they know you're going to do everything possible. In the Fed, we have a real stiff in the Fed, but that's for another day. But they raise rates. So everyone says, oh, they announced great numbers. It's great, great, great. And the market goes down because they immediately raise rates. No, when the market goes up, they should lower rates. You want to see 20% and 25%? You want to see what we can do? We've got to go back to an old standard. When there's good news, the market should go up, not go down. Does that make sense to everybody? And that's the way it used to be for most of the time. That's the way you make a country great. But our growth potential is unlimited and could be much higher if we went back to sanity. We're not doing it anymore. We're talking about the head of the Fed, and I want somebody that when the market is doing great, interest rates can go down because our country becomes stronger. See, you view it differently. Our country becomes stronger, and therefore interest rates should go down, not up. They kill every rally. If it's, no matter who, if it's beyond me as president, it's no matter who's president, you have a good quarter and they want to kill it because you're so petrified of inflation. And growth and inflation don't necessarily go hand in hand. You can have growth and very low inflation. In fact, oftentimes growth is good for low inflation. So we're going to work on that, Scott, right? I think we're going to work on that very hard. I mean it so strongly. It's sickening. We announce good numbers and we see the stock market drops 300 points. I say, what the hell is going on? Do you agree with me? It should be just the opposite. All right, Scott agrees, so I'm very happy about this. That means if he didn't agree, I wouldn't do it. But we're already growing double, triple, and even quadruple the speed of almost every other major economy on Earth. We're the #1 economy on Earth, too. And the results are in, and the Trump economic boom is officially begun. It's really begun almost from the beginning. Almost begun, if you look at it, really from November 5th. On another metric, just before the election, it was almost impossible to get people to join the military. We had the worst enlistment in the history of our country, the worst. You couldn't get people for the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, Space Force. the Coast Guard. You couldn't get people. And since right after the election, but especially since after January 20th when we took office, we have now the strongest enlistment we've ever had in the history of our country. We've never enlisted people so quickly, so easily. And we enlist by merit now. You know, we won a Supreme Court case that said you hire by merit. You go to college now by merit. Everything's by merit. Our country became great because of merit. And we have done some job. But think of it, a year and a half ago, we had the worst enlistment in history, and now we have the best enlistment. Things like that don't happen. You might go from the bad enlistment to okay, but you don't go from the worst in history to the best in history. But that's what we've done, every one of them. And that includes police and firefighters. It was very hard to get police. It was very hard to get firefighters, and now everybody wants those jobs. In 4 years of Biden, they secured less than $1 trillion of new investment in the United States. So 4 years, less than $1 trillion. In less than 1 year, I have secured commitments for over $18 trillion from all over the world, the most ever for any country. Think of that, though. They did, and I'll tell you what, had she won, it would be a disaster because you were having people leave. You would have not had $1 trillion. You would have had 5 trillion, 10 trillion leaving the country, and your welfare would have doubled. When you look at what's going on in Minnesota, is that a disgrace? Is that a disgrace? But we'll talk about that. Under Biden, we had the highest trade deficit ever recorded, losing more than $1 trillion every single year. How about that? It was killing Michigan, and everywhere else in our country was being absolutely destroyed. But in a matter of months, largely because of tariff income and the election result, we've slashed that gaping trade deficit by, in a short period of time, 62, it just came out, 62%. People are stunned. The fake news back there, look at those cameras rocking and rolling. No, the fake news back there is, they're very upset about it, actually, but they're stunned. They can't believe it. We cut our trade deficit in actually 10 months was when the number came out. We cut it by 62%. It's going to go better than that now. The stock market is now the highest in history since the election. We've set all of those records, and I think an all-time record that's so important to me because so many people have them is boosting 401ks and retirement accounts for millions and millions of Americans, people that are in the police departments, the fire departments, people that are construction workers. A policeman came up to me recently, a nice guy guarding me. He's a perfect guy to guard me. He was a massive guy, big, strong guy. He said, "Sir, you made me look so good in front of my wife. My wife thought I was a horrible investor because every time I invested, we lost money. And we have a 401k, and I'm up like 85%. She thinks I'm Warren Buffett. She thinks I'm brilliant. She's now calling me brilliant. It makes my life much easier. I love my wife much more now. She calls me brilliant every time." I said, "Don't worry, you're going to do even better for the next 3 years." But one of the biggest reasons for this unbelievable success has been our historic use of tariffs. There was the tariff that made America strong and powerful in past generations, and then we got off it and we went to the income tax system. Great going, fellas. You know, we were the strongest in 1887, relatively speaking. That was around the McKinley time, Teddy Roosevelt and some others, but we were really strong. It was all tariffs. And I know what happened. Some of these countries got together and they say, hey, convince the United States that it's no good, the tariff system is unfair to us. And so some genius, I know who, I don't want to get into it, but some genius said, oh, let's go to an income tax system. So instead of foreign companies and countries paying everything, the people started paying. And then after that, you had a depression, but that was a long time. That was in like 1913, you had the tariff switched into income tax. And then in and they like to blame tariffs. You ever notice they blame tariffs? No, they brought tariffs back in 1932. They brought them back to try and save the sucker. But it was in 1929, because a lot of people, you know, the anti-tariff people. Now, an anti-tariff person is a pro-Chinese person, like Coke. This guy's fought me in every election I've ever been in, and I've kicked his ass. He inherited a lot of money, and I don't know the gentleman. But he fights me, and then he goes out and says, I made more money with Trump than I ever made in my life. And then he supports these other people that were total losers, gives them a lot of money, but he made more money. Everybody makes money with me. I always made money for people. Now it's tariffs that are making money for Michigan, and the entire country is stronger and safer and richer than ever before outside of that period of time. Now, if they had what was called the Great Tariff Act of 1887 or something like that, and it was a great group of people like yourselves, they picked really smart people to sit on a committee. They had so much money, they didn't know what to do with it, and they wanted to have the money given away. You know, we built the Panama Canal out of tariffs. We did a lot of things. Panama Canal was the single biggest investment, relatively speaking, that this country's ever made, would be the equivalent of trillions of dollars today. And Jimmy Carter gave it away for $1. It was also the most profitable thing ever built. In other words, like buildings or casinos or anything, the most profitable thing ever built was the Panama Canal. And brilliantly, Jimmy Carter thought the country of Panama should have it, even though we lost 36,000 people to the mosquito. You know that, right? To the mosquito and a certain snake, which was not a very nice reptile. This was a brutal reptile. You got bit, it was over. It was just like, bye-bye, everybody. We lost 36,000 people. Malaria, the mosquito, and the snake. And he gave it away for $1. Well, at least we got $1. That's better than most of those guys do. We got $1 for that. Most expensive thing ever built, most profitable thing ever built, too. Makes so much money. Every prediction the critics made about our tariff policy has failed to materialize. The evidence shows overwhelmingly that the tariffs are not paid by American consumers, that they're paid by foreign nations and middlemen. And Scott went over that with us before, and they're paid by middlemen. They raise the thing. Countries get involved. They pay them because otherwise they won't have companies. They won't be viable. And we're the big beneficiary. Once again, the so-called experts were 100% wrong, and Trump was right. People of Michigan were 100% right. You elected the right guy. If you had the other person, everybody, we wouldn't even be having a meeting today, probably. There'd be no meeting. The economic club would be saying, like, man, we're doing bad. It's going to be awfully tough to get people to show up. This is going to be tough, the chairman. This is going to not be a good day for us. We don't want to have, let's cancel the meeting immediately. The Trump tariffs have delivered us trillions of dollars of new investment, unprecedented new partnerships on minerals, rare earths, defense, and artificial intelligence, and historic levels of foreign military sales. You know, you have the Supreme Court now going to rule on whether or not we can use tariffs. Can you believe this? A case brought about by people that are China-centric, foreign-centric, but China-centric. I wouldn't want it if I was China either. You know, China's one of our biggest taxpayers right now. China, would you ever believe you'd hear that? And they've been great. My relationship with President Xi has been great. But we have a group that's foreign-centric, China-centric, suing, and we'll figure something out if we don't win, but we should win. I mean, we should win. So great for national security. I ended 8 wars. Think of that. 8 wars. And without trade and tariffs, you wouldn't have been able to end any of them. But they brought hundreds of billions of dollars pouring into the United States Treasury, helped curb inflation, and helped cut the federal budget deficit by a staggering 27%. And that's only for a short period of time. The number's much bigger than that when you add in the full year. And I've told people I got into a lot of trouble because of the fake news back there. I told people, I said, tariff is my favorite word. I said, my favorite word of every word is tariff. I've loved it for 40 years. I came here many years ago. Remember, they said I didn't come here. Then they found out I did. I got an award in Detroit, in Michigan, many years ago, and still have it. They said it never happened. It did happen, turned out. I didn't notice any apology. But all I did was talk about you're losing your car industry. This was long before I ran for politics. They said you're losing. I said, why are you allowing these foreign nations to take your car? You know, you lost 57% of your car industry. The good news is you're getting it back. But I said, why aren't you using tariffs? I've been very consistent, I will tell you that, for years and years. Even as a private businessman, for years I used to, because I got, for whatever reason, a lot of publicity always I don't know if that's good or bad, but it happens. And I talk about the importance. But I said recently, I said, tariff is my favorite word in the whole dictionary. There's no word. And I took a lot of heat. They said, what about your wife, your children? What about religion and God? What about Jesus? So I said, all right, it's my fifth favorite word. And since then, I've been fine. They hit me hard, these people, the fake news. They were killing me over tariff. He likes tariff more than his wife, more than religion. He likes tariff more than anything. What a disgrace. So I now call it number 5, and I'm in good shape. That was a rough day. It's my favorite word, and I got killed. Every word, you know, when you go up here, you take a big chance, especially me, because I go off teleprompter about 80% of the time. But isn't it nice to have a president that can go off teleprompter? When you think? Remember the speeches Joe would make? First of all, they'd last a matter of seconds, you know. Thank you very much. You ever notice Joe would always cough before a speech? State of the Union, he gets, ladies and gentlemen. And then it would be like very short. Although the one time they had him spruced up pretty good, remember, he was high as a kite. He was floating, he was up there way up. That was a bad speech. But, hey, he got through it, you know, he got through it. If you call it getting through, this country was so, can you imagine allowing 25 million people into our country, many of them criminals, many of them murderers? What he did to this country, what they did, because it was the people surrounding that beautiful Resolute desk. But just as I promised you that I've imposed a 25% tariff on all foreign automobiles, I'm standing up for the American auto worker like no president has ever stood up before. You know, those tariffs are keeping the foreign auto workers. Now, if they want to come in and build a plant and hire you and hire your friends and your neighbors, that's great. I love that. Let China come in, let Japan come in. They are. And they'll be building plants, but they're using our labor. U.S. auto factories are now seeing more than $70 billion of new investment. Think of that. They were leaving. They were all going. They were going in the opposite direction. Now they're pouring back. It's the greatest. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And much of that money is coming right here to the car-making capital of the world, Detroit. You lost, I mean, so many places. Since I took office, Ford has announced it will invest $5 billion across its Michigan and Kentucky plants, creating 4,000 new jobs. GM is moving production of the Chevy Blazer and Equinox from Mexico right back here to America. Right? Is my favorite auto worker here by any chance? You know who I'm talking about. What happens? Where's Brian? Brian, oh, I see. He made some cash. He's have to. Oh, he's been very disloyal to Detroit. We're gonna have to. He is such a great guy, right? Man, that guy fought for me when it wasn't the popular thing to do. He fought for me from day one. Well, you tell him I said hello to him, all right? That guy, he got it. 4 years ago, he got it right at the beginning. He understood it better than anybody, better than the great economists. They had no clue. And Stellantis is investing $13 billion to expand its U.S.-based manufacturing plant by more than 50%. Stellantis doing a good job. Never before has an administration achieved such sweeping and dramatic turnarounds as has taken place just in this very short period of time. I mean, you're talking about 11 months. 11 months and you have a different business. 11 months and you're booming. I just spoke to an AI guy, and that's booming too. You know, we're leading China in AI by a lot. I'm letting them build their own electric plants because people are saying, you know, the amount of electricity they need twice as much as electricity currently in the United States for every other business, home, factory. They need double. So I said, we can't do that. And then I had the idea. When they build these $50 billion plants, I'm going to let them build, and they're already building big electric plants to take care of their plant. And any excess electricity, they'll sell it back to our country. It's an unbelievable, and therefore we're going to build, I think if they really added, you know, you hear how much. And I have great respect for China, but you hear they're building a lot of electricity, but we are too. But we're having it built privately. They're going to own their own electric. They're becoming their own electricity producer. And when they heard this idea, they thought it was great, but they didn't take it seriously because they said it's too good to be true. But then they realized that I was serious. They were getting them 2 and 3 week approvals. They don't have to wait for 20 years before they get rejected. You know, in the old days, they had to wait for 20 years, and then they get rejected at the end of 20 years. Guys would give up their whole career trying to get one approval, and then they get rejected. In every aspect of our agenda, we're putting America first, and nothing will stand in our way. Nothing's going to stand in our way, nothing. So one of our top priorities in this mission is promoting greater affordability. Now, that's a word used by the Democrats. They're the ones that cause the problem. The one thing, they stick together. They don't have some of the people that we have. I don't know, it's a genetic thing. It's something in the blood. We got some real losers, mostly great. But I wouldn't use the name Romney because I'm in his sort of territory. So I would never use that name. But all right, I'll use it. They don't have a Mitt Romney that votes against everything. They don't have a Rand Paul that votes against everything. I got him elected twice. He was a stone cold loser. I went to Kentucky where I won by a lot. I did a rally for him. Then I did another rally. He won. Then I went the second time. He won. Then he votes against all the time. It's just crazy. I don't get it. Then you have Lisa Murkowski and you have Susan Collins. Disasters. And you had a gentleman from Indiana that I don't believe it, Todd Young, he voted against. And you say, why are you voting against? They can't give you an answer. They're unable to give you an answer. It's like, why are they against the attack on Venezuela? They're against the attack after they found out it was the most successful attack, probably the most talented, most brilliant tactically attack that we've had maybe in 100 years. And they're against it. Why? It's one thing if the attack failed. I'd probably do that too, a change. I'd be in favor. Then if it failed, I'd say, I told him not to do it. That's what they do. But here we have one of the most successful attacks ever. And they find a way to be against it. It's pretty amazing. But it's a shame. And we have some others, but not many. We have a great party, but we have people, the Democrats, whether you like them or not, they stick together like glue. They have horrible policy. Thank God they have horrible policy. Because they're smart, they're evil, they're vicious, but they have bad policy. For instance, you could be a genius and try selling men playing in women's sport. You could be a genius, try selling transgender for everybody, open borders, let the world come in, let the world's prison population come into the United States, including all of the murders, 11,888. That's what we're trying to get out of Chicago and Minnesota and these places. So they stick together, which I admire because I'm a very loyal person, but they have horrible policy. Can you imagine if they had good policy? They were on this morning talking all the reasons that men should be playing in women's sports. They had a football guy there, flag football. This guy was like 6'6". He weighed 290 pounds with zero body fat. And they had a few young women. They were the size of his leg. He wouldn't have had to run. He could have just walked. They couldn't have done a thing about it. 10 of them would have to jump on him that wouldn't have had any impact. I don't think he would have been like a fly. It's so ridiculous. It's so demeaning to women. It's so demeaning. Look at the weightlifting records. I mean, the record got beaten by 112 pounds, a record that stood for 18 years. 1 ounce they'd put on stood for 18 years. Guy comes along who was a poor lifter as a man. He was at the lower portion of the class. Comes along and broke the record by 112 pounds. Think of that. They've fought for years to beat that record. How about the swimming records? I mean, you can go to sleep during the time the man comes in and the woman. You can go take a nap for a little while. How about the long-distance race that took place not so long ago? Long distance, these marathon deals. They had top men, top women. The man came in. The woman came in 5 hours and 14 minutes and 36 seconds behind the man. Think of it. You're waiting. The man comes in. Now you're waiting 5 hours. What
Guys,
are you
I don't
Holmes?
think transgender people in or women in men's sports or whatever Trump is talking about, I don't think it's relevant to economics at all. So I'm gonna just cut that and let's sort of cover what President Trump has said. Sorry guys, I'm still a little bit sick. I'm gonna cover what President Trump has highlighted within the past, I believe it's been like 20 minutes now. Oh my God. And we'll also go through Bitcoin TA because Bitcoin is actually going to the upside. So we're sitting at $93,950. We're seeing a little bit of a pump, and I'm going to explain to you why it is that we're experiencing this pump, and we'll break down economically. I mean, he did say some economic things. Okay, let's give the man some credit. I will go through that. It was funny. It was a funny first 20 minutes. I mean, I think it's safe to say that Trump has no ego. That was sarcastic. So let's do a quick summary of everything that he said that I found was interesting to cover. All right. So he first started off saying that the Fed should cut rates when the markets are booming. I mean, I don't think that's a smart thing to be saying. You know, I mean, look, I am a kid after all, right? I made this post over on Twitter. I said, hey, you know what? When President Trump said, when markets go up, the Fed should lower rates. That's not how things work. But hey, I'm just a kid. You know, what do I know? Well, I do know. Okay. Unfortunately, back then, the times that President Trump was referring to, America hadn't built up $38.6 trillion of national debt. You follow a Keynesian economic system. In the mid-50s and in the 1900s, they introduced the boom and bust cycles where you would lower interest rates, make it cheaper for people to borrow money. You would do quantitative easing. Well, quantitative easing came in the 2000s, but you would make it so that it's cheap for people to borrow money. When it's cheap for people to borrow money, like 0% interest rates, 1% interest rates, obviously, if you have the ability, you're going to go to the bank, you're going to get out as big of a loan as you can. You're going to invest it into something like real estate, like the risk-on market, which includes equities, and you only need to make 1% or more to be able to pay off your interest, and the rest of it is yours to keep. So this repetitive cycle over decades and decades and decades built up huge amounts of debt because you're printing money out of thin air and giving it to these people for very low rates. You broke off the gold standard in Richard Nixon's time in the 70s. And specifically when the gold standard was abolished was when the US national debt started to kick off and it got elevated post the 2008 financial crisis. So you've built up $30.6 trillion of national debt. And it exactly is the reason why when markets are booming, it shouldn't be that you should cut rates to stimulate a further boom. No. The Fed has a clear dual mandate. They need to manage inflation and they need to manage the unemployment rates. Speaking of inflation, today we got the CPI data year on year. We're going to go to tradingeconomics.com and I'm going to show you the latest inflation rate. It came in at 2.7%. Okay, so that's the official inflation rate from the BLS, which we know is not the most accurate in calculation. We have the Trueflation data that is a more decentralized aggregator. They claim to 34 million different products, goods, and services, and then come to their summary of what they think the actual inflation data is. And according to them, it's sitting at 1.8%. So we know that the dual mandate that the central bank is enforced to sort of meet is having inflation currently at 2%. And having the unemployment rate come down as low as possible. When we look into the inflation, according to Trueflation, you're already at that 2% category. You look into the unemployment rate, and in the very short term, unemployment rate is slowly starting to reduce. And we'll visualize that over on the screen today. I mean, right now, you can see it's dropped from 4.5 to 4.4%. So there is some sort of progress. So when you look at this data and you ask yourself logically, does it make sense to lower the interest rates? It doesn't. It really doesn't. Because if you do, you're going to cause a bunch more inflation, right? Inflation is going to go through the roof. And yes, the economy, when I say the economy, I'm referring to the stock market. Yes, the stock market is going to continue its boom. However, its consequences will be far more dangerous. Far more dangerous. Yes, the stock market is going to boom. And by the time it booms, and then you sort of have the post effects of reducing rates when inflation is, yes, at 2%, but it's going to be re-stimulated. That will happen when Trump is out of office. So it will be the next president to deal with the results of it. And what will happen is the gap between the very wealthy and the very poor, it's going to get wider and wider. Inflation is going to hurt more people. It's just a disaster. It's a recipe for disaster. So when you look at things right now, just purely out of the lens of the dual mandates that the Fed has, it doesn't make sense to lower interest rates. Where it makes sense is when we focus on the business cycles. We know that America has to refinance approximately $9.5 trillion this year, and that's going to be done between January to June. They have to do it. There is a bit of a pyramid scheme that the financial system is built on, and it began in the World War eras, where basically to fund the First World War, America needed money. So they decided to create something called a bond. They decided to they decided to collect money from the populace and sell a bond. Okay, this was the first introduction of the bond system, or one of the first introductions. This was in the 1900s, early 1900s. So they create a bond, they raise a bunch of money, they fund the World War. After the World War, when the bonds mature, America doesn't have the money to pay off the initial bond investors. So that's the first layer, the initial bond investors. So what do? They introduce another bond. In comes the second layer. With the money collected from the issuance of the second bond, they pay back the original investor. And this system continues and continues and continues and continues until in the 2000s, the Fed goes into an operation where with the click of a button, they can print money, billions of it out of thin air. So you don't have to rely on the system so much anymore. But still, there is an element of refinancing. And there's an approximation that $9.5 trillion needs to somehow come to America to be able to pay off those investors from various different financial products. So obviously, the interest rate is currently at 4%. If they bring down the interest rates, then they're going to save between 100 to 200 to maybe even $300 billion in refinancing costs. So from a fiscal policy point of view, yes, it totally makes sense to reduce interest rates, but that is not the responsibility of the Fed. It's not the responsibility of the Fed, all right? So I get Trump on why interest rates need to be reduced when he refers to the refinancing of debt. But in this speech, he only stated that they need to do it because markets need to be further stimulated. That doesn't make sense. So I disagree with him on that. Then he went into the Panama Canal. He mentioned that the Panama Canal was given by Carter for $0, but the true reason why the Panama Canal was returned to the Panamanians was because of imperialism. The Soviet Union was creating propaganda, they were creating propaganda that America is an imperialist country, and they're doing colonial era type stuff by having a canal in a different country and profiting from it. So to sort of escape out of that imperialist propaganda, Carter decided to give back the canal. And he was a man of morale, and he was a man that cared about these things. And when we look at President Trump, through him going into Venezuela, through the situations that are going around, he doesn't seem to care so much about imperialism. Is imperialism bad or good? I'm not the one to judge. I have my personal opinions. I'm going to let you guys decide. I don't want to commentate on that because I know in the chat there's a lot of people that are very pro-Trump or not pro-Trump at all. And I just don't want to be tied up into that polarization. And it's really sad, we all have opinions on certain things. I have opinions on where Bitcoin is going to go to. I have my opinions on religion. I have my opinions on the meaning of life. And I have my opinions on politics. We all do. I just don't get it where debating about everything and having a difference in opinion in almost all aspects of life is okay. And we respect those differences in opinion. And we talk, we debate. We come to conclusions by taking what you said and what I said and being logical. But when it comes to politics, why the hell can't we be rational? Why is it so polarized? Why can't somebody like a certain politician and another like another politician? Why can't someone like certain policies and others dislike certain policies? When did we get to this state? Why are we dividing each other over some things that, don't even affect 90% of us? It doesn't make sense. It's like you support Barcelona and I support Real Madrid. I love Real Madrid. You love Barcelona. Okay, fantastic. You know, what's the issue in that? When there's El Clasico and one team wins, are you going to go fighting with the supporters of the other team? No, you're going to shake their hand. You're going to say, good game. That's all you're going to say. Okay, maybe inside you'll feel a little bit upset that your team lost, but do you have to portray that upsetness in a violent way, whether if it's verbal or physical? I don't get it. I honestly don't get it. Please, guys, don't fall into the trap. These are all traps to divide you. Don't fall into the trap of division. We're one, we're united, right? We need to respect our differences in opinion. That's how we thrive. If we're all very tribal in our thoughts, if we only think that what we know is correct, how do you progress? And for years, we've been thriving on our differences. And just very recently, when politics became so polarized, that's shifting. Let's please focus on unity. Let's please focus on respecting our differences of thought. Okay? That I just wanted to highlight that, and I think it's important that we do. All right. So the Panamanian Canal was about imperialism. It was about general ethics and moral, right? And at that time, the Panama Canal wasn't seen as something so important. That changed later on, but it was water under the bridge, ironically, when it did change. And then President Trump went into his decision with regards to the Fed chair. He said, I want somebody that's going to reduce rates. And he has the power to appoint a new Fed chair. He has the power to appoint a Fed chair. And that Fed chair that he will appoint will obviously be Trump monetary policy. He made it very clear that he wants his appointed Fed chair to reduce rates. And we're probably going to get it, right? We're probably going to see that reduction in rates, whether if it's right to do it or wrong to do it. It will cause the risk on market and equities to rally in the short term. But when you think into the macro, it's going to create a significant inflation problem that in 2028 and beyond will probably result in a great recession. And it's very important not to chase short-term reward. Don't chase short-term reward if it's going to cause you pain in the long term. Do not do it. Don't do this in life. All right? Yes, short-term gain, short-term, money, short-term, whatever it is, pleasure, excitement, it can seem attractive. If you have the option to do it, your brain is going to want to choose that option. But don't do it. Long-term is always the way to go. And this would definitely create long-term pain. What else did he say? He also mentioned that he wants to get oil prices lower. When we go to the WTI prices, we're currently sitting at $61 per barrel. Trump mentioned that he wants to get it down to specifically $53 earlier on today. And can he do that? Well, yes, he can. He has access to $17 trillion of crude oil reserves that belong to Venezuela. And conveniently, in Texas, you have one of the biggest refineries in the world to take very dense crude oil, refine it, and turn it into things like kerosene, which is, fuel to fuel planes. Then you have other sorts of petroleum and whatnot to create different things, to create clothing products, to make it into gas to fuel your car. There's something called fractional distillation that you can put crude oil into, and depending on the heat that it's sort of, there's a specific process. You can turn crude oil into different things, all right? And the more dense the crude oil, the more expensive it is to refine. Venezuela has the largest crude oil reserves in the world, but it is notoriously known to have very dense fuel. So the refinement process is very expensive. And when you sell that crude oil, you're going to have a lot of costs. So you're not actually making profits, too many profits from the sale of that oil goods. Whereas if you go to the Middle East, the oil that is in the Middle East is far less dense. So it's more profitable when you sell it because there's less refinement to put that oil through. So Trump can definitely bring down oil prices because now he has access to Venezuelan oil. And if he does, energy, right? Oil is energy. Oil goes into clothing. Oil goes into even food products. Some of you may not know that. But if he brings down oil prices, then he will bring down inflation. Let's see if he's able to do that. If he is, then that will be an interesting change of things. But time will tell. Then he mentioned that he wants to make Venezuela great again, if I remember correctly. Earlier on today, he also made a post saying that he wants to make Iran great again. Well, this goes into imperialism, right? And whether if you think that imperialism is good or bad, that is totally up to you. And I don't want to give a comment on it, right? It's just I'm praying for the safety of everyone, and the safety of civilians. So let's see, there's going to be developments on Iran. Obviously, if geopolitical tensions rise, then for risk-on assets, which includes Bitcoin, it's not the best in the short term. And I know a lot of you want to know what is happening with Bitcoin. Bitcoin reclaimed $94,000. We're at a critical point here. Bitcoin, if we break above 94, I would say 0.4, with 2 daily consecutive candle closures, then you're going to be going towards that 200 daily moving average. You see, I think we're going to reach that 200 daily moving average regardless. I think it's going to happen. Bitcoin is still following the 4-year cycles. I know everybody says, oh, you know what? The 4-year cycles are dead. Oh, you know what? We're doing the 5-year cycles. The truth is, we haven't seen the expansion in the ISM yet. What determines the 5-year cycles is the ISM PMI data. When I go into the ISM PMI, you're going to see that the PMI is still below 50. What does that mean? It means that the economy in America is still in contraction. You're not in an expansionary economy. It is contradicting to what President Trump says, but yes, it's the truth. The economy is currently in contraction. That's the measure by the ISM PMI data. All right. So where was I going with this? Oh my God, it's too late at night, and honestly, it's been a long day. But what I'm trying to say is I think that the Bitcoin price is going to reach the 200 daily moving average at some point. It's going to do it because you've done it in every single cycle. There you go. People are saying that we've shifted from the 4-year cycle to the 5-year cycle. I agree that it's going to happen soon. It's going to happen soon, most likely this year. But as of right now, January the 13th, Tuesday, 2026, we're still operating on the 4-year cycles because we've not seen the expansion in the economy. So currently, the 4-year Bitcoin halving cycles, the 4-year American electoral cycles play a bigger role for now in the time being than the liquidity cycles, because there isn't any great stimulus in the economy to shift you from a contraction into an expansion. As soon as we go into an expansion, that is going to confirm the 5-year cycle theory, and then things will change. But because we're still operating in those 4-year cycles, I see it very probable that Bitcoin will go to that 200 daily moving average because you do it every single time, right? Keep this in the back of your mind. Let's go to 2021. Take a look at 2021. Q4 top, right? Just like what we had in 2025, October the 6th. That was also a Q4 top. You fall below the 200 daily moving average. You consolidate within it for about 2-3 months. And in March of 2022, you see the retest. That's that final bit of hopium. People go from, being in denial of people are always in denial that the bear market is beginning. This pump happens and they get excited. They're like, oh my God, see, we told you. Super cycle, right? And then you see the big rejection going into bear market, all right? So it happened in the last cycle. You go back, even to 2019. This was a top that was created 2 months before the end of QT. We created our most recent top on Bitcoin in October, 2 months before the end of QT. So monetary policy wise, I think we're going to follow this price structure. I don't think we're going to see a 75% crash like we did in 2021, 2022. Instead, I see us consolidating for most of this year. Can I be wrong? I can be absolutely wrong, right? And I'm okay with being wrong. I have to approach things from a statistical and a probability point of view. My prediction currently makes sense to me based off of the data and statistics that I have right now. If that data changes, then obviously the analysis can change. But based off of what I have today, this is what I can tell you that makes the most amount of sense. Even in 2019, once you fell below the 200 daily moving average, you got a retest and Bitcoin went lower. Go back into 2017 top, right? 2017, you break below the 200 daily moving average. We're gonna have to switch into the Bitcoin index price because Binance didn't exist prior to 2017. So we go back. Look, 2017 top, 2018, you get that retest, and then boom, down goes the price of Bitcoin. Let's go to the Genesis cycle. Even in the cycle where people deem as completely irrelevant, it was still a Q4 top, like every other top on Bitcoin. Then you saw a break below the 200 daily moving average. You got a retest, and guess what? Bitcoin went to the downside. So based off of this logic, it is the most sensible thing to assume that Bitcoin will retest the 200 daily moving average. It is going to do it. The big question is, it's not that big of a question because trading wise, the only thing that I'm going to be doing is shorting Bitcoin when we hit that 200 daily moving average. That's it. That's literally all I'm going to do. So people that feel FOMO right now, people that are unsure what to do with their trading, I'm going to tell you what I am going to do. I'm going to short Bitcoin when we hit that 200 daily moving average. I'm very confident that we're going to see that retest at some point, whether if it's next week, the week after, next month, it doesn't matter. When we see that retest, I'm going to short Bitcoin. We can look at short-term factors like the 4-hourly and the daily charts to try and see, okay, when is it going to take place, just to have some time for preparation, right? We have an ascending triangle. Look, from my experience with Bitcoin, ascending triangles at the bottom of a trend do tend to break to the upside, but we need to consider one thing. We need to consider that this is the transition from bull into bear market. So the probabilities, I'm going to be very honest with you, all right? For this one, it is probably 50-50 or 55-45, all right? We just need to be focusing on the price levels here, all right? Sadly, we can't give a definitive trend on which way this pattern is going to break towards. The amount of two daily confirmations makes sense. If we can do 2 daily confirmations above 94.2, 94.4, then I think price is going to get magnetized to the 200 daily moving average. If we don't do that, if Bitcoin doesn't do that and decides to fall below 88, 87, particularly the 84.2, that would mean Bitcoin will have to first go below $74,000 and then reach the 200 daily moving average. There is one very important thing, again, to remember and keep in mind. There is still a CME gap open at $88,200. There's a 97% chance that CME gaps close. This CME gap is no exception. 88.2 is going to be a place that Bitcoin is going to reverse to at some point, whether if it's now, whether if it's after it retests 200 daily moving average, Bitcoin will eventually get here. It would always be better for Bitcoin to close it first and then make a decisive move so that we don't have question marks and what ifs at the back of our minds. So I hope that that analysis is clear. I hope it makes sense. Watch out for 94.2, 94.4. The daily candle for today closes in approximately 4 hours' time. Remember, geopolitical tensions in Iran are rising. I'm going to check if President Trump is still speaking. We still have a CME gap. There is still uncertainty in terms of monetary policy. So to be bullish in the macro is tougher, right? I would prefer being a pessimist at this moment in time. And it's okay to be a pessimist sometimes if logic and reasoning allows it to. President Trump is still talking. I wonder what he said during the times that we were chatting. Is there anything important that POTUS said? Nothing that concerns us. Okay, nothing that concerns us. Okay, nice. Right? So that's something that I wanted to touch on with the Bitcoin take, as I promised you I would go and talk about Bitcoin. I'm just checking the chat. There's a lot of comments. Hold on, let's go here. Barcelona doesn't have an effect on your life. I get what you mean. I get what you mean. But if you are violent verbally or physically due to your difference in thought, that division that's going to come as a result of it will have a net negative, as opposed to respecting each other's division in thoughts, forming a consensus, right? Being respectful and then progressing based off of that result. That will have a net positive. So being divisive will have a net negative impact on society, whereas unification will have a net positive impact. Divide and conquer, exactly. We should unite against evil, exactly. Yeah, petroleum, kerosene, etc., etc. Yeah, okay, we can take a look at the Russell 3000. Pancake Swap I used to own a lot and did AutoCake before, but not anymore. Guys, don't spam, please. Thank you so much, Mike. Yeah, please stop spam, otherwise I'm gonna have to ban. Okay, let's take a look at the Russell. Bitcoin is doing well right now. Russell 3000. I don't feel like this is the right thing. Forgive me, it's not something that I take a look at too often. Yeah, we can take a look at the Vanguard ETF. Okay, let's put Andy. This was Andy's request. I'm going to listen to my man Andy because he's a big supporter of the shows and the videos here on Crypto Kids. Okay, so there is a interesting comparison, right? I would like to, if you allow me, Andy, I want to compare Ethereum to Tesla stock, which is kind of similar to the Russell in terms of price action. But I think that Ethereum here looks, this is the daily time frame. Hold on, give me a moment, dude. I think Ethereum is much more comparable to Tesla stock than it is to the Russell. You will see the genius behind my madness in just a moment. All right, okay, so on the left is Tesla stock, on the right is Ethereum. Shout out to Benjamin Cowan, because when he was in Dubai, he showed me this, okay? Take a look at this, right? Price action goes up, price action goes up. Peak, peak. Second peak, second peak. Peak before decline, peak before decline. Decline, decline. Higher high, higher low, higher low. All right, pump, pump. Well, I'm going to say this is the pump. Decline, decline, pump, 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 pump. Right? The only thing missing is this decline here. All right? And that's missing on Tesla. Now, there's two deductions you can make. You can state that either this here was the decline, which would make sense because it's a higher low, and here would be a higher low, and that Ethereum should be rallying now. Or you can make the prediction that Ethereum is front-running Tesla. I'm going to say that this is the option that I'm going to go with. All right? I think that this decline here corresponds to this decline here, meaning that Ethereum should have a rally. Does that make sense when we put it into Bitcoin terms? Of course it makes sense. Why does it make sense? Well, it makes sense because Bitcoin has to rally to its 200 daily moving average. And if Bitcoin rallies to its 200 daily moving average, then obviously Ethereum is going to rally too. Where would that take Ethereum? Well, that would take Ethereum most likely to the 3,500, if we're lucky, to the $3,600 area. Would that mean that Ethereum is out of the woods and it's time for all-time highs? No. Okay, there's still a head and shoulders. I didn't take profits on my Ethereum positions yet that I opened at 1.5, 1.6 because we didn't break below this neckline. If we do, I will take profits. Remember, Bitcoin is pumping, but there's still a CME gap at 88.2. Just please keep that in the back of your minds. If we get two daily confirmations above 94.2 to 94.4, I would probably go with the scenario that Bitcoin will go to the 200 daily moving average and then close the CME gap. But ultimately, we will. Okay, so yeah, I'll give you my honest opinion on Cake. The honest opinion is, I think it was cool in the last cycle, but look, they did this thing called Auto Cake, which was giving insane amounts of APY in Pancake Swap, in Cake coins. I've checked the APY recently, it's come down quite a bit. The reason is, right, this APY mechanism, it's all fraudulent, okay? It's all fraudulent. If you can see an opportunity to make money with these APY gimmicks, then yeah, okay, do it, but it's risky, right? Maybe it's gonna work in the short term, but I would always avoid doing it in the long term. Always, always, always. This APY system is kind of similar to countries with hyperinflation, where they offer tremendous amount of interest rates when you keep your money in the bank, right? They offer like 5%, 8% interest rates per month in hyperinflationary countries in the local currency. In the local currency, they give that to you when you put your money in the bank. But there's always a chance you won't be able to get your money out of the bank. The bank could one day just say, hey, there's no money. I'm sorry, we can't give the money back to you. It's kind of a similar system with these yield farming frauds, okay? There is only a very limited amount of projects and mechanisms that are legitimate, legitimate sources of yield farming. In the long term, they're never going to work out. PancakeSwap has been around for a while. PancakeSwap is, by the way, is a DeFi platform. I think it's very cool. I think it's great. I love PancakeSwap on BSC as a DeFi platform. But this APY mechanism is eventually going to run out of steam, and I think it's already running out of steam. If the protocol decides to make the token inflationary, I'm not sure if it's inflationary or not, but if they do decide to make it inflationary to continue this gimmick of APY, that means they would print more cake to give you back the yield. But once they print more cake, the value is going to drop. Why? Because there is monetary debasement. You see, it's all the bank giving you a yield is a Ponzi. These things are a Ponzi. Like it's just Keynesian economics, and I hate it. Bitcoin is at 94.3 now. We're running into resistance from the highs we created back in the 6th of January. By the way, I was right. So I just want some, I'm gonna be a little bit egoistic here. We did say that today is going to be volatile. So make sure to destroy the like button if you watched yesterday's video where we said Bitcoin 24 hours left, and we began the video stating that volatility was going to be coming back into the markets, and back into the markets they are. Make sure to destroy the like button, and make sure to let me know if you're watching these videos on a daily basis, because I promise you, I put my blood, sweat, and tears. I'm here literally every single goddamn day. If you appreciate it, destroy the like, please. It would mean a lot to me. Okay, so I'll go through more questions. CK, you sound like Da Vinci. Well, I'm happy to sound like Da Vinci. You know what? I will do that, Woods. Thank you. Andy, yeah, I think you're right. Thumb down, says TMJ. Well, that's up to you if you want to give a thumb down. I don't think I deserve the thumbs down. But hey, it's a free world. You do what you want to do. Still love you anyways, TMJ. I'm just checking my notes from the Trump speech. What else did he mention? Well, he wants Greenland. But Greenland's mentioned today that they would choose Denmark over the US. Let's see what happens there. Military action would suggest imperialism. But then again, it's up to you to decide if you think that imperialism is good or bad. It's not for me to tell you. Thanks, Mike. Okay, let's take a look at thanks, Daramola. Let's take a look at the Russell. And then I want to check if yeah, so guys, by the way, look, running into resistance here, all right? We're running into resistance here. I wouldn't be FOMOing here. Again, I would be looking for 2 daily confirmations above this line of resistance. Please don't FOMO. No need. I think the most opportunistic trade is shorting at the 200 daily moving average anyways. So I wouldn't be FOMOing here. I want to check the volume profile. We're probably tagging the value area high. Let's make sure. I always lose it. I always lose. Where's this tool? I can never find it. There it is. And then I want to do another one. Yeah, see, okay, we're just over the value area high. But I would assume if I do something like this, yeah, we're around the most area of demand. Yeah, important resistance above us. 94.4. Russell 2000. Wow. You know what, Andy? I think you're right. Does look pretty similar, but I I would go with the Tesla comparison over this, Andy. Personally, yeah, I would go with the Tesla comparison. I see what you mean. I see what you mean. There is definitely a strong resemblance, and we are going to new all-time highs. But I mean, you can state that this low was the low here, and then you have this low. These lows were just equal to these lows created. This high was this high. You know what? Fair analysis, Andy. Well, that would mean that this is here. Hmm. Interesting. Um. Well, I'll tell you this much. I'll say that I don't think now is a good time to be selling. There is a chance that Ethereum, according to the Russell comparison, does a recovery like so. All right. Look, I don't think this is a time to be selling. I've always said this. I think 2026 will be a time to accumulate. Let's see. Andy, it's an interesting one. I want to dive deeper into it and then share my thoughts, okay? If that's fine. Interesting, Andy. Yeah, I find it very interesting. I might have to ask Ben about it too. You know what? I'm going to text Ben. I'm curious to see what he thinks. I'm actually very curious now. Because if this is to be true, then it changes a few things for my outlook. I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to save this image and I'm going to ask Uncle Ben. And then I guess you can make the case that either that this was that. Okay, look, I'm going to save this and I'm sending it to Ben right now. If we're lucky, Ben is awake and he sees my message. Also, so I was asking him about something else this morning. Curious on your thoughts on this. Curious on your thoughts about Russell 2000 and ETH comparison. Okay, I sent it to him. If we're lucky and Ben is up, and he is up usually around these times, then there's a chance he answers. He's a busy man, so got to keep that in mind. Oh, thank you, Andy. Thank you for bringing that up. Is there anything else that we want to go over? Guys, honestly, I'm not going to lie. I'm very tired, but Bitcoin is pumping, so I don't want to leave you also. Bitcoin is pumping 94.4. Nothing new from Trump. Checking if there is. There isn't. Again, I want to state that there is no need to FOMO, in my opinion, when it comes to this Bitcoin increase in price. No need. We're at resistance. Market's about to close. Did it close yet? It didn't. How long do we have until markets close? Market closes in 55 minutes. So market's about to close. Wouldn't be expecting much volatility after market close. We're at resistance. I don't think now's the time to FOMO. Yeah, I heard what Trump said about Powell. He insulted him again, but are we surprised? We're not surprised. Let's check if Uncle Ben saw the message. I doubt it. Oh, Jorge Villa's in the chat. Shout out to Jorge. Great to see you, man. Very happy that you were able to make it. Guys, make sure to destroy the likes. Also, if you're looking for a place to be trading Bitcoin, links are down in the description below to Weeks and CoinFlare. As always, if you want to support the shows and get the best bonus available, links are in the description, but you know it at this point. But you can always make the case, Andy. I'm looking at this again, okay? I'm just taking a look at it once more. We asked Ben, we'll have to wait for what he says. But you can also make the case that Ethereum is actually front running the Russell. So you could make the case that actually looking at the Russell 2000, perhaps this dump that took place is actually foreshadowing a dump that could take place on the Russell, right? We need to consider that. But I would understand why we wouldn't want to assume that because, well, this high created was just a little bit higher than that 2021 high. This high created was just a little bit higher than the 2021 high. The current all-time high is much, this does look more likely. What is the Russell? I'm going to ask a very humble question here. I want to make sure, I'm checking, what is the Russell? I'm checking on ChatGPT. Russell 2000 composed of. Let's see. Working. The Russell 2000 is a US small cap stock market index. Here's what it's made of and how it works. 2,000 publicly traded American companies These are the smallest companies within the broader Russell 3000 universe, typically ranked from 1001 to the 3000th by market capitalization in America. Market cap ranges from roughly $300 million to 2 to 3 billion. Common sectors include financials, industrials, healthcare, consumer discretionary, technology, and energy. Well, when we focus on the sectors, we know that energy stocks are exploding because of Venezuela. We know that AI is booming. That falls under technology. So I would assume that the current pump in the Russell 2000 is primarily dominated by the technology and energy categories. Is there a way to isolate energy and technology companies within the Russell 2000 from the Russell 2000 to try and see what is actually pumping? FTSE Russell. So there's a Russell Energy Index. All right, I'm going to try to do something here because I have a thesis. Okay, again, there's going to be some genius behind my madness, but you're going to have to stay put. This is me doing my live research. This is what I would be doing before I publish a video, but I'm going to do it with you guys here. So if we look at the Russell 2000 energy, do we find something? Can we isolate it to just energy? I don't think I can. According to ChatGPT, it's possible, but at least on TradingView, I can't. iShares Russell 2000 Energy. The ticker is IEO. IEO. Oil and gas next. Large cap portfolio. iShares. iShares Russell 2000 Energy. How is there no energy? There should be energy. The ticker is IEO. Energy ETF. Yeah, there should be IEO and IWM for technology. What about IWM? IWM. Okay, I think I may have figured it out. Let me try. The Russell 2000 ETF that we're going to go with. No. You know what? Okay, never mind. I give up. I was trying to isolate the energy and technology companies to try and see if those were the two sectors, which I think should be the case, that's causing the Russell 2000 to pump overall. So if they were the energy and technology companies that was causing the Russell overall to pump, then we would have made the conclusion that, okay, that comparison is not really relevant because energy stocks are going up because of the Venezuela situation, and then technology stocks are going up because of the AI situation. So it wouldn't be relevant to Ethereum. And I would have just looked at the Russell 2000 with technology and energy isolated, and then would have drawn a comparison between the two charts. But I couldn't do it, sadly. Anyways. What to do? Okay, guys, oh my God, the light just died. I think that's a sign. Yeah, Trump just called Powell a jerk. Great. How nice of him. Okay, I think I'm going to end it here for the live stream. So Bitcoin is at 94,400. You guys know the drill. Right, we need to see 2 daily candle closures above. Okay. All right, guys, I'm going to go to bed. I'm very tired. I can barely keep my eyes open. My brain barely works right now. So, guys, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Love you all. And I'll see you all tomorrow on the Moon Show. And